Let's look at the steps to success for Chapter 7, Level 1, which begins on page 449. It says, Barbara asks you to organize the data for sportswear retailers into an Excel table. The data is currently stored in a text file and is organized by state. You will begin by creating an Excel workbook and then pasting the data from the text file into a worksheet. Number 1 says use Notepad or another text editor to open the text file named sportswear.txt and examine the data. Here is that file which comes with the text, and we can open it with any program we wish: Notepad, WordPad, Microsoft Word. If I don't do anything, if I just say what's the default TXT, it's Notepad. So apparently it says here are our different, wow, there are a lot of things in here, aren't there? These are organized by state. So I've got Tacoma, Washington, California. They want us to organize it by state. It's not. Okay, so there's our text file. It's got a bunch of different things in it. It says close the file and then close Notepad. Number 2 says create a new workbook named Sportswear Retailers. Here's a new workbook. We save it as Sportswear Retailers. I'm going to put mine on the desktop, make it easy to find. Sportswear, spelled out, Retailers. It says import the data from the text file into a worksheet named Imported Data. So I'm going to rename this Imported Data. It says starting in A1. We could copy and paste all that, or we could, under the Data tab, we could say get external data from a text file. Let's do that first. I'm going to say get external data from a text file. We go to the folder where it is. Notice it says look for anything that's all text files. And there is my sportswear.txt. And it says what kind of data do you have? And if we look at this, we don't have headers on it. Is it separated by different things? In other words, do you want underground in one column and sports in another column? No, that's the name of the company. Do you want the street address in more than one column? No. These are all separate rows, all in one column. So we could say it's delimited, but we're only going to want one column. If we click Next, it says what are your delimiters? We're not even going to have a delimiter. And now if we click Next, it says I guess you want them all in one column. And I say yep, that's right. They'll just be in different rows. So if I click Finish, it says where do you want to put it? I want to put it in existing worksheet starting in A1, and when I paste it, it all comes into the first column. And if I go to the end of that, it is almost 8,000 rows. And apparently there are 4 rows per store or vendor, so there are about 2,000 retailers listed in here. Number 3 wants us to create a list of comma-separated values. In other words, we want all these things in different columns. We want one row per retailer. We want each row to be a separate record. So we would want the name here, the street address here, the city here, the state here, the zip here, and then the phone number here. So, and they want them all separated with commas. So here's what we are going to do. We're going to separate them with commas, and then we are going to separate those into different columns. All right. So what I'm going to do is we need to trim each one of these, because notice there are some spaces at the beginning of these because they're indented to let you know that they're part of that, but we don't want any spaces between. So we're going to want to trim each one of these things and separate them with commas. So I'm going to say, give me the trim of this thing. Now concatenate that with a comma. Now concatenate that with the trim of this. Put a comma in between them. Then give me the trim of this. Put a comma. And finally, give me the trim of this. And it says we've got underground sports, comma, no space before the 226. Give me that street address, comma. Now we've got the city. It already had a comma. State, zip. Then here's the comma we put in. And then finally the phone number. That's all in one cell. And eventually we're going to break that out and put these in separate columns. We'll have 1 column, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. Name, street address, city, state, zip, and phone number. And now I'm going to, if I copy this down, it's only every 4th one that's going to be good, isn't it? In other words, if I copy this down, it's just going to go below. This one is good, but this one picks up the 3 rows below it. This one picks up the 3 rows below it. This one picks up the 3 rows below it. So every 4th row is correct, and the others we're going to throw away. At the bottom of page 449, number 4 says to use the appropriate functions to identify the rows of data that hold the concatenated values in the correct order. We started with this import. It had each record spread out over 4 rows with the name of the retailer, the address, city, state, zip, and the phone number. We concatenated those together with commas in between, and of course we've got a problem here that we'll fix later. And because we copied that formula down, it did it on every row. So it's really every 4th row that we want. It is this one, this one, this one, etc. We need to have them in the right order. There are a lot of ways we could find that, but let's use a way that uses the text functions that we've been talking about. If we notice, what's one thing that's in common about the 4 or the correct rows that have things in the right order? What could we look for that would specify something different? One of the things we could do is notice that the phone number is the only thing that has a hyphen in it. Everything else doesn't have hyphens in it. So one thing we could look for is a hyphen. However, it would find a hyphen no matter what order it was in, wouldn't it? So we'd find a hyphen in every one of those. But what if we said, peel off something off the right-hand edge and then look for the hyphen in there? If it's in that part of the row, then we know it's good. So let's start first of all by peeling off the last 5 characters of each row. If you'll recall, that would be the right function, RIGHT, and if we look at that function, it says this returns the specified number of characters from the end of a text string. So we want to pull off something off the end of this text string. So that's the text string I want to pull something off of. And what do I want? How many characters do I want to pull off? If I want to include the hyphen, I'll need at least 5 characters. I could do more than that. Let's just do 5. And so we're just pulling the right 5 characters off each one of those. And so if I copy that down, I can double click the fill box and it'll go all the way down to however many rows we have. And you can see that the rows that we want are the ones that end with that phone number, and all of them have a hyphen in them. We're talking almost 2,000 records, almost 8,000 rows, 4 rows per record. So now that we have those last 5 characters, we can use a function to find a hyphen in there. Remember, the find function, F-I-N-D, says find any given text you want to look for, then tell me within what text you want to search, and then if you want to start somewhere other than at the first letter, you can tell me that too. So what we would want to find is a hyphen. So I'm going to put that in double quotes, double quote, hyphen, double quote. That's the find text. That's what we're trying to find. And then I need a comma. The next thing I want is, where do I want to look? Within what text do I want to find that? Just right here. And now I really don't need a start number because I'm going to start at the beginning. If it finds it, it will find me, it will tell me the character position that it finds it. So this should tell me character position 1 because that's where it finds the hyphen. But if it doesn't find the hyphen in those 5 characters, it's going to return an error. And we really don't want it to return an error. So let's do let's do an if error and say, let's put an if error around that and say, give me that thing, but if that thing's an error, then give me something else. I could just say error, or I could say put a 0 there, or whatever. I think I'll just say error or not found. It doesn't really matter. Just something where we don't get that error. I'll say hyphen not found. How about that? So now it should give me a 1 in every row that is the one I want, and it should give me a hyphen not found in every other row that I don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this formula all the way down, and it should be that pattern. 1, no, 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 1, no, no, no. In other words, we want every 4th row. Another way we could have done that is tell me the row number and divide it by 4 and, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of things we could do, but this is as good as any. So now we have identified the ones that we want to keep. We can throw these rows away, can't we? We just want each record on a separate row. So let's turn the page to page 450, and number 5 at the top of that page, it says copy and paste this concatenated information as a list of comma separated values onto a new worksheet named CSV. So we're going to do a new worksheet, and we're going to call the sheet CSV for comma separated values. and we're going to copy this data, and what we really want is to have these columns with it, don't we? So I'm going to copy all of this. I could put this all in one column, but we don't have to. We can trash that column later. So I'm going to Shift, arrow right, and then I'm going to Control Shift, arrow down, and that's going to get me all the way to the bottom of the list. So I've got those three columns, every row. I'm going to copy that, go back to CSV, and paste it. Actually, I think I will paste it as values. That way, I won't have to worry about them being formulas. Because remember, that formula is a trim function, isn't it? And so we don't want that to be referring back to A1. We want to paste it as values. So I'm going to paste that as values here. And now notice this is actually the number 1. This is actually the text hyphen not found. This is actually those 5 letters, and this is actually the text without the trim functions. It's the trimmed text. So I'm going to expand those columns, auto size them, and now I think the easiest thing to do would be just sort by this column. All the ones would be together, everything else would be together, and I could trash everything else. So I'm going to sort by this column, A to Z, and that is, I could do it here, I could do it a number of places. So I'm going to sort A to Z. It has all my ones here, and I'm going to go down until I see a hyphen, which should be about row 2000, and there they are. Oh, interesting. Everything should be a 1, but here's a 2. Ah, fade in, fade out had a hyphen in it, didn't it? And Save a Lot had a hyphen, and Suite B224 had a hyphen. So we know those are no good either. It's just the ones that are good. Okay? Actually, we probably should make sure we might want to peel off the last 4 and make sure they're all numbers, because there could be, instead of a fade out, there could have been a out hyphen fade, and then we'd have hyphen FADE, and this would be a 1. What we might want to do is sort first by this column, then sort by that column. A 2-column sort, and then if there was anything other than numbers, we'd see it. So I'm going to do that, and let's do a data sort. Sort first by column C, that's what we've got. Add level, sort then by column B. So now, sort anything that looks like a number as a number. Sort numbers and numbers stored as text separately. Yeah, let's sort anything that looks like a number as a number. So, notice here are all of our ones, and I guess it's descending. So we've got 998. Let me see how I sorted that. Well, A to Z, A to Z. It starts with the hyphen. Interesting. Anyway, these are all ones. These are all sorted numerically. And as we come down through there, as we get to the bottom of the numbers, aha! There's one just like we thought there might be. There was a hyphen with 4 alpha characters after it, and it returns a 1 like it should, but we don't want that row. So I believe we're okay. And just to double check, this looks like we have 1993 rows. What is 1993 times 4? It is 7972. That should be how many rows we have over here. 7972. 4 rows per record. So we should have 1/4 of those as our good rows. Okay? And the last thing we need to do is delete the rows we don't want, and then we can delete these columns as well, because all we want is this data. Here's a little trick that might be helpful. In the name box, I know I want about the first 2,000 rows. So I'm just going to say, take me down to A2000. I can type in any reference and then press enter and it'll take me to that cell. So here's A2000, and I really only wanted up to 1993. Though that's my last good row. So I'm going to select 1994, select the whole row, and I'm going to press Control, Shift, arrow down, and that's going to select every row from here to the end of the data. And there it is. And I'm going to delete all those rows. And now all those rows are gone. And I don't need these columns anymore because I've got what I want. So I'm going to delete those columns. Here's a little trick. Once you select something, if you do Control and a plus, Control and plus, it inserts things. And if you do Control and minus, it deletes things. Control and minus equals delete. And you can't just hit the delete button. This inserts rows and columns. This deletes rows and columns. Remember, if you just press the delete key, you're just clearing the data, the contents. You're not getting rid of the row or the column. Okay. Now in this case, we could have probably just deleted the contents and it would have been just as good. But I'm going to select these two columns, and now if I right click and do delete, that's the same thing as if I press Control minus, Control hyphen. So Control minus deletes things, Control plus inserts things. Okay, so that's a very nice shortcut. Let me get rid of those so they don't mess us up. Let me delete out here in case I wrote anything. Okay, so there is all of our data, no formulas, everything we want. Now we just have to clean it up.